I believe we are now live. It's 5 o'clock my time in Mauritius, and yeah, we'll just since we've just passed the hour, we'll just give a few minutes for other people to join in this webinar, and so just give me a couple of minutes before we get started. I can see a lot of AI note takers also joining the webinar. So we'll be together for about an hour, well, just an hour. And this is going to be a feature we'll be repeating for the next 5 weeks. Same day on a Friday at the same time. So just make note of that. And yeah, 1 more minute and then we'll get started.
Or maybe Fridays are not good for people to.
I guess they're all in the pub at the moment. Maybe.
Hopefully, yeah. No, people are coming, so yeah, people are joining.
Enjoy the silence before we get started. All right, it's 2 minutes past the hour, so I think we'll just get started, and then others who join can catch up with what's happening. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized jointly by the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Digital Agri Hub, hosted at the University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. And this webinar is being organized in collaboration with our partners, AGRA, Farmerline, and DIASCA. DIASCA stands for Digital Integration of Agricultural Supply Chains Alliance, and that's part of the GIZ program. So, yeah, as you can see, we have our speakers lined up for this afternoon, and we'll be together for the next hour. So let me just see if I can. Oh, that's the thing. My slide is not moving, is it?
No, it's not moving.
Okay. That's the challenge. Is that better now?
No, it's not showing now.
Is it back on now?
Oh, not back on.
Yes. Ben?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Is it back on now?
No, it's not back on.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, we didn't check we didn't check. We checked that the slide appeared, but we didn't check that it was the actual slide version.
You moved, yeah, you did move the slides, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's see again. Let's start again. Am I still sharing or not?
No,
let's see. Share.
Okay.
Yeah, and
it's coming now. Okay, now you need to put it on. Yeah, now you need to. Okay, good.
So you can see the second slide, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So yeah, just to get started, although it's not very relevant now, usually when there are fewer people, we allow for you to have your microphones on and your videos on, but in this case, because there's so many of you, we've disabled, or we are controlling the microphone and the video centrally. But by all means, hopefully, what's important is that you're able to interact with us. So just to remind you that we have a chat functionality available. I cannot see whether people are introducing themselves, but feel free to engage in the session with each other. But if there are questions to the speakers, please try to use the Q&A to actually insert your questions or comments to the speakers. So we are here, as you can see in the title, we're talking about this concept called DPI. And obviously we have our speakers who will be talking about it, but I just did a quick search, and you know what I found is that the term digital public infrastructure is a term that came up, was used around 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, when we were all getting excited about these prospects of open data, open systems, digital commons. And then that was the time when we conceptualized it, but not much happened because we knew the potential of what technology could do. And then there was a bit of a lull. But what happened was we had cases in some of the countries, and especially in India, where some of these applications were built to scale. That means they were able to be used at the whole population level. And I'm sure you've heard of a few of these applications. So no wonder that in 2023, when India was hosting the presidency for the G20, and they organized the meeting in India, and they introduced the first global meeting on DPI. And since then, we've had a flurry of reports, being introduced about this term we're calling DPI, or digital public infrastructure, that several organizations have got on board in a way. And just to give you an example, just in 2025 itself, we've seen several reports that have been produced, one by the World Bank, describing the World Bank's approach to DPI and development. We've had reports around the whole concept of digital public goods from the Digital Public Goods Alliance, which is monitoring that. We also had a recent feature, which was the DPI map, which was launched last year, but in April this year, they updated the version. So we have now visually an understanding of where DPI is being implemented across the globe. And more recently, we had another document which describes the DPI approach for the agricultural sector. And that's what one of our speakers will be talking about. And obviously, what is upcoming from the Commonwealth Secretariat is a policy guide on this concept of a national agricultural data infrastructure. So this is just to introduce the term DPI, but we're going to learn more about it. And to do that, we've lined up our speakers for today. And we'll go with ladies first, and I'll be introducing Ms. NAgDI Parekh, who is digital specialist at the World Bank. So she's been working in different parts of the world, in Asia, now working more on development projects in Eastern and Southern Africa. So she is also the one who supervised the consultant who worked on that recent report, but also she's also one of the co-authors of this report, as I mentioned before, labeled a DPI approach for the agricultural sector. So with these, I will hand over to NAgDI to make a presentation. We've given them 10 minutes, allocated them 10 minutes. So let's see whether we can get the contents done. I'm sure they have a lot more to talk about, but we'll do whatever we can in the 10 minutes. And then, as usual, all of you will be receiving these slides that we've used during these presentations. Thank you very much. And over to you, NAgDI.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Krishan. I'm just going to share my screen as well so I can share my slides. Thank you for that introduction, and just to extend a warm welcome to everyone who has joined, and thank you so much for attending the session and being our partners also in your interest in this topic. So today, as Krishan mentioned, I'll be building on what he spoke about and kind of setting the stage on what is DPI and how it can be applied to the agriculture sector. As he mentioned, we have written a new paper with the Gates Foundation, co-developed VitalWave and OAN, where we do exactly this. And the idea was to provide a collective thesis on how the DPI approach can be applied to the agriculture sector. And before we go into that, I would like to set a little bit of context on why do we need a new approach to digital agriculture solutions. So from an agriculture perspective, digital solutions are not new. Many have tried, some have succeeded, some have failed. And so the question is, maybe why have we not seen massive success at scale for digital solutions in agriculture? And the answer is for many reasons, from fragmented data systems to duplicated efforts, uncoordinated governance, high costs, and so on. And just for illustration purposes, you can imagine a situation which is very common where agriculture data often sits in different silos. So you can have, for example, farmer data sitting with the Ministry of Agriculture, but agriculture product price data sitting with a private sector company. And because of this, it's not easy for someone to create a product that uses both these data sets. And so this hinders a variety of use cases. And so DPI provides a new holistic approach to thinking about digital solutions for an economy. So let's speak a little bit about what is DPI. As Trishan mentioned, DPI has been a key topic now for a few years, and many organizations have different and developing definitions, as you can see on this slide. So the World Bank recently published a paper this year, which aims to simplify and provide a collective definition. And what's important is not really what the definition is or what the specifics of the definition are, but rather the understanding of what DPI is, which is usually around the same. And so we define DPI as a system that serves as foundational digital building blocks for public benefit. And what this means is that DPI has a set of characteristics, as shown in this figure, relating to the scope, specification, and norms, which define what can be referred to as DPI. Now, we don't really need to get into much detail about what these characteristics are, but in essence, traditionally, like we just talked about, digital systems will be built in silos. So each ministry or department had its own database and platforms and so on. And what the DPI approach changes is that instead of having these separate systems, you build shared foundational digital railroads that everyone can use. And just an example, rather than every agency collecting biometric data, say for a farmer ID, then a national ID, then for your education ID, you can have a single foundational digital ID that can serve multiple purposes, from health, education, agriculture, social protection. And this reduces duplicative costs, increasing the financial viability, and enables data sharing more easily. And this is how it tackles some of the key constraints faced by other digital solutions. And so here I'm just trying to present what are some of these kind of systems when we talk about DPI. So some are already fairly well established. You have digital ID such as Maisha number, e-Estonia, Aadhaar. You have digital payments such as Brazil's Pix or India's UPI. You have trust frameworks like consent protocols or digital signatures and data exchange platforms. But there are also others that are systems that are still emerging. These are, and some examples of these are discovery and fulfillment. And these are systems that connect buyers and sellers. You have foundational data services like weather and geospatial interoperable data. And increasingly now, of course, language localization models powered by AI. So this is all just to set the stage for what DPI is. And so the big question for us today, of course, is how can this DPI approach, both the set of systems and the characteristics we spoke about, be applied to the agriculture sector? So in this paper, we propose that there are really two main ways that this can happen. So first, the agriculture sector can leverage existing foundational DPI. So the ID, payment systems, data sharing systems for the agriculture sector. And so, for example, a national ID can be used to target agriculture subsidies, or digital payments can ensure farmers receive credit or input transfers directly and on time. And then a second way in which DPI approach can be applied to agriculture is by agriculture building its own sector-specific building blocks that sit on top of the foundational DPI. And together, these two layers create a strong backbone for digital agriculture. And so we attempted to put this in a diagram. So, you start with the basic technology infrastructure at the bottom, which is connectivity, power, compute, and so on. On top of that, you layer your foundational DPI building blocks, such as ID, payments, data sharing, and so on. And then the green layer is where the sector-specific building blocks sit. And together, these support various services and applications that create value for many stakeholders across the agriculture ecosystem. And so, I mean, to drive this point home, in a sense, we are saying that DPI in itself can already help certain agriculture use cases, but coupled with sector-specific building blocks, it amplifies its ability to provide digital agriculture solutions at scale. And these building blocks now use DPI principles, so they are not just sectoral implementations which are siloed like previously, but they can speak to the various systems that exist across sectors. And so we put together some ideas of what these building blocks would look like. So you have agriculture registries such as farmer and plot registries. You have agriculture data standards, data exchange protocols, and so on, which I'm sure we'll speak more about. Then agriculture data services, and then AI assets for agriculture. So all these kind of implementations, which are more specific to agriculture data. And together, these help address many use cases, from helping profile farmers, linking multiple data points, to access to digital agriculture finance, traceability, market discovery and fulfillment, as well as AI-enabled services. And in the hope that I still don't overwhelm you with this figure, but this is what the ecosystem could look like together. So these are still those layers that we spoke about previously, but populated with the various DPI systems, then the agriculture building blocks, and then the potential use cases as well and applications that we can look at. And this isn't just theoretical, right? It is already happening now. And for example, even with World Bank projects, 32 million farmers are being registered worldwide on farmer registries. But you see implementations of this also across the world. And there are various examples of this that are highlighted in this slide. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop here, but and we'll also, of course, share the paper where we speak about various other aspects from cost benefit to practicalities of how to get started and so on. But this is just to set the stage and give you a flavor of what is DPI and how can this approach be applied to the agriculture sector. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nidhi. I think this is really good. You actually used 8 minutes or so, I think, in there. But I think, as I told as I mentioned before, the full set of slides will be shared with everyone. So there's a lot more that Nidhi hasn't actually displayed, but it gives us an understanding of the principles of DPI. And as Nidhi also explained, how do the foundational aspects of DPI sort of percolate or infiltrate what we do as what we build as modules within the agricultural sector, and how do these eventually support the services we offer in the agricultural sector. So, right. So now that we've understood a little bit about what DPI is and also got an insight into how it works in how it could work and is working in the agricultural sector, we'll move to Robert Karanja, who is our second speaker. Robert is a senior director at co-develop. Now, if you read up about DPI, you might come across the term, the collaboration or collaborative arrangement that co-develop is, which is actually leading some of the interventions around scaling DPI. You will probably read about something called 50 in 5, which is the ambition to have 50 countries implement DPI in 5 years. I'm not sure how long ago the 5 years started, but we are well underway. If I understand, they've already reached about 30 countries so far. Now, we will post the bio of Robert in the chat in a moment, but I will just leave you with one of the quotes from one of Robert's article, where he says, "The future does not belong to those who bring the technology, but rather to those who build, govern, and own it." And I think that's a very deep way of introducing you, Robert. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Krishan, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll just share my screen. So, Krishan, I'm just sharing my screen, and keeping in mind that Nidhi has done a great job of covering what is DPI, the different definitions of digital public infrastructure, and also what digital public infrastructure, the digital public infrastructure approach in agriculture will look like. I will focus a bit more on our work at Co-Develop. Krishan, can you see my screen well? Okay. Right. So I will, in the interest of time, will cover relevant areas and some of the lessons that we're learning through some of the work that we're taking on the African continent from a co-develop perspective, and hopefully that will align with the introduction that was given by NAgDI. So to get started, I'll talk a bit about the two tracks that co-develop makes investments in. One, of course, is in tech deployment, and the other is in inclusion and safeguards. And in tech deployment, we are currently making investments that are impacting or working in 42 countries. As you can see, 25 of those countries are on the African continent. And we do also have some regional plays that we're working on with the EAC, SADC, and COMESA, particularly where cross-border payments are involved. In Asia, we have made investments in about 9 countries, and you can see them listed on the slide. And in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are working in 8 countries. And that's on the tech deployment side of things. If you look at the chart that I have to the left of the 42 countries, you will see 20 of those countries are in design phase, 9 are in pilot, 11 are in use, and 2 of those countries have gone to population scale as far as digital public infrastructure is concerned. The second track that Co-Develop makes investments in is the inclusion and safeguards track. And this is primarily making ensuring that any of the tech deployments that we make investments in as Co-Develop are aligned to the UN Universal DPI safeguards. In 2024, 190 member states of the United Nations endorsed the DPI safeguards framework through a global digital compact. And currently, as we speak, 10 of the countries that we're working in and 8 ecosystem players, including DPGs, are currently advancing commitments to implement the framework at the national level. And the countries are listed there, including Brazil, Rwanda, the Dominican Republic, Tanzania, Lesotho, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and Ethiopia. So what are some of the lessons and reflections that we're learning from an African perspective? One thing that has been pretty evident to us at Co-Develop is that in Africa, the idea of using digital public infrastructure for digitization is widely accepted. And we see these cases through many countries across the continent. In addition, the private sector is also starting to get involved, particularly on building open source software solutions through digital public goods. And this has emerged as a viable option, to the traditional vendor-locked proprietary solutions in areas such as payments and ID systems, for example. Countries are also more keen to have greater control or more agency over some of their critical national digital infrastructure. And we're seeing this right across the continent and the countries that we're working in. And how do they do this? They would want to see more local capacity get involved, so a greater use of local developers. They would like to see a greater use of the local private or greater involvement of the local private sector to respond to RFPs and upgrades where digital public infrastructure is concerned. They also want to see capacity within government officials built to be able to not only be well informed, but when making decisions, these senior government officials are well equipped to be able to make those decisions. And another challenge, or this is actually a challenge that we've seen across Africa, and why countries are really seeking more agency, is the fact that we simply do not have enough African-grown solutions. And this could be either DPGs or DPI rails. So there's a big push in that direction. And so what's the call to action for African countries? Krishani mentioned the 50 and 5, and this is an unprecedented momentum for 50 countries in 5 years implementing digital public infrastructure at population scale. Many of those countries are actually going to be on the continent. We are seeing a short window for impact, usually 1 to 2 years for countries to be able to make significant impact. We're also encouraging greater collaboration between countries, especially regional initiatives. I've referred to some of the cross-border payments, and we've also started working with the African Continental Free Trade Area to actually operationalize elements of the free trade area and see whether ID, for example, could be able to go across borders, and recognition of ID across various countries should be made an easier process than it currently is. We do know that there is global underinvestment in digital public goods, and so a greater investment or mind shift is required as far as DPGs are concerned. Again, there is a need for nimble risk tolerance capital, and that's needed now. And then finally, localized capacity. How do we build local capacity in Africa that can not only build the systems, but also maintain them? And if it's the adoption of systems, how do you customize them? And the best way to do that is using local capacity, right? So I'll skip through the various case studies and just go straight to my last couple of slides. What are some of the lessons that we've learned from DPI implementations across Africa? Right. We've seen an emphasis on inclusive design, where digital public systems are required to not only showcase offline capabilities, but also USSD access. The penetration of smartphones, I think on average across the continent, probably sits at about 30, maybe 40%, and it's even lower in some countries. So USSD access is still very important to widen the reach to underserved populations. The leveraging of partnerships, whether it's collaborations between governments, local tech startups and hubs, international partners, will not only accelerate implementation, but will also foster innovation. We can build scalability through open source. African countries can prioritize open source frameworks that reduce cost, support scalability, and less dependence on vendor or proprietary solutions. Interoperability, creating more interoperability between existing and new platforms. One of the questions we keep fielding is, when you look at mobile money platforms such as M-Pesa or MTN Momo, how do you integrate those existing solutions that have taken so many countries on the continent through an entire financial inclusion growth? Countries such as Kenya, for example, before the advent of M-Pesa was sitting at 23 or 24% financial inclusion, and currently Kenya sits at somewhere around 90%. So how do you build on those existing systems through interoperability to then leverage some of the scale that those systems have been able to build over the years? And then finally, local adaptation. Can we have solutions that are tailored to meet local needs, local requirements and challenges, and also getting extensive input from community stakeholders, including local developers? Finally, some of the key takeaways as far as African innovation in DPI is concerned. We are seeing a greater call for African solutions to African problems. So each solution will reflect the unique social, economic, and technological landscape of the country. There are significant differences, even in RECs that have quite a bit of commonality, such as the East African community. You'll find the unique needs that are in Uganda will not be replicated in Rwanda. Those will also be different from Burundi, very different from Kenya, and also Tanzania. But yet there's so much commonality between the RECs, both in terms of language, culture, customs, you name it. But we do need to take into account that the solutions reflect those unique issues that come up in countries. And then a focus on financial inclusion. Africa's DPI initiatives can prioritize to bring the underserved into the financial system, with either accessible digital ID solutions and also payments. And then as a path forward, continued regional collaboration, whether it's through the RECs or among countries, and also actualizing and innovation around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as a platform, innovation in scalable tech, PPPs, which can expand digital public infrastructure across the continent. And we've seen that happening more recently in certain countries where use cases are being built upon foundational digital ID by the private sector, and essentially building out PPPs. We've seen that recently in Ethiopia with Visa and FIDA, which is Ethiopia's digital ID. And we foresee that there will be continued growth in building out those PPPs and actually also scaling up use cases on foundational digital public infrastructure that will not only improve implementation, take up, scale up, but also building out use cases that make sense to the populations that are expected to use this foundational digital public infrastructure. Krishan, I think my 10 minutes is up, so I'll pause there for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Robert. This is very interesting because I've picked a few things and I've just noted down some points that you made, that in general, countries are very keen to adopt this DPI in the process of digitalization. You talked about private sector building open source solutions, which is sometimes seen as being contradictory, but you said it is happening in Africa. There are obviously some comments talk about the issue of digital sovereignty. How do we ensure or do we achieve digital sovereignty? Others kind of touched on security and so on, data security. But what's interesting is that there are commonalities amongst the countries and the regions in Africa, and yet we are not sure whether we are seeing a convergence or not. And I think that's the kind of conversations that we need to have. And obviously, the issues of the need to adapt the approach to the local context, while at the same time building capacity. And I go back to what you said to quote you, it's not about those who bring the technology, but it's about those who build, govern, and own it. I think there's a need for ownership of these issues. So with these kinds of issues in mind, and I think these are the same issues that Ben encountered or had in his mind at the time he started this whole initiative around what we're calling NAgDI, National Agricultural Data Infrastructure. So with this, I'll introduce Ben not to talk about NAgDI yet, but actually to introduce the series of events that we are kicking off with this webinar today, which will be taking place over the next 4 weeks. But Ben will give you an overview. So Ben is my friend, but he's also advisor, agriculture and fisheries trade policy at the Commonwealth Secretariat, working in the program called the Commonwealth Connectivity Agenda. So Ben, I'll leave you to it. Let me just say Ben is also the architect of NAgDI. So conceptualize it. We've worked together over the last couple of years to try to make more sense out of it and validate the concept. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Christian. Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. And thanks to NAgDI and Robert for that introduction. Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen. I hope the spotlight is still on Christian.
No. We can see your screen. We could see your screen.
Oh, you can see?
Yeah.
Because okay, then let me.
But not yet. Now you've.
Yeah, no, I stopped it because I thought the spotlight. So yeah, so for those who don't know me, I can see a lot of familiar names in the audience, and I believe you know me. So I don't need to say much about myself, but where I work. If I don't talk about where I work, I think they will fire me tomorrow. So because I can see my colleagues and some of my bosses in the audience. So the Commonwealth Secretariat, as you can see, cut across 5 regions with over 2.7 billion people. And we have trade, economic development, trade and investment as one of our programs. That is where I sit, and I work on the connectivity agenda for trade and investment. Within the program, my activities focus on agriculture and fisheries, where digital is a core part of it. So for the last 3-4 years, we've been working on this data, digital agriculture, and the problem is the same. From NAgDI's slide, we are all talking about silos, the problem of interoperability, so that is the same thing that we have been working on with all of you for the last few years. In 2022, we developed a digital agricultural framework. Then within that framework, one of the pillars, the central pillar, is data infrastructure. So that is what we are expanding, now as National Agricultural Data Infrastructure. So what we are talking about is part of our digital agriculture, digital fisheries work, of course. And then, the Commonwealth Trade Ministers meeting, because I work within trade, they also call for our countries to develop digital public infrastructure. So we are aligning this with DPI, as you have heard from NAgDI and Robert earlier. So in 2023 and 2024, we decided to go to some countries with support from Open Society Foundation. We went to Malawi, Ghana, Bangladesh, and Barbados to have a conversation with our stakeholders on the current data management systems in the country. So you can see the pictures on the screen. Participants from this audience, multi-stakeholder, average between 80 and 100 in each of these sessions. Just for 2.5 to 3 days, we deliberated on how are they currently managing agricultural data, what kind of systems they are working on, what are some of the challenges they are facing. Again, these are the contents. We did a lot of diagnosis to confirm that, look, there's a problem, there's a challenge, there's these silos data systems that are not interoperable, and everybody is investing, making their money out of it, even the government are providing services just on their data systems. And then we took the NAgDI model to these countries to discuss. So we had good discussion on NAgDI model in relation to DPI. We also built a consensus that, look, there is a problem and there's a need for us to do better data coordination. And then we agreed that we'll have some follow-up actions. So these are some of the follow-up actions from this dialogue. So some of the participants that were part of those national dialogues who are here, these are some of the follow-up actions that we are. So we developed a number of resources. We produced country briefs for Malawi, Ghana, Bangladesh, and the Caribbean. The Caribbean was a regional one. We also wrote a number of blogs and all kinds of things. So if you are looking for, you search on our website, the Commonwealth Secretariat website, you see some of these to read. Now I want to introduce you to this NAgDI. So again, all that we are doing today is to create the appetite. And I'm not going to go into NAgDI for you to understand today, because for the next 4 weeks, we're going to look at DPI, NAgDI, and all kinds of data coordination through the webinars as well as the eConversations. So I'm not going to, we cannot answer all the questions about NAgDI in the next 5-10 minutes. But the name, National Agricultural Data Infrastructure. So the vision of what we are doing, just to tell you that NAgDI is not a DPI, okay? NAgDI is not a DPI. It's not any tech platform that Commonwealth Secretariat is promoting. But what we are trying to do is to address the challenge that NAgDI and Robert have mentioned earlier, the silos, the fragmented data systems, the inability of this national system to talk to each other connect and exchange data. So NAgDI is about how do we strengthen and harmonize the existing individual data system. So if you are here and you have a digital platform that is operating in the countries you are part of it, we want to help you strengthen your data systems to deliver better services as NAgDI has said, whether weather, market, finance, that is the idea. So once we do that, we create that enabling environment for our countries to make macro level policy decision as well as investment decision. So NAgDI is about adding value to what you are already doing. It's a process which we need to take that journey together with you. So Commonwealth is not coming to build NAgDI for any country. We have to work with you to put that together. We are referring to agricultural data. We are saying the infrastructure has to be for a data in our country. So we have two groups of data, content data and user data, that anytime we talk of data or agricultural data, try to understand that we are saying, either your agronomic data, weather data, production data, those are the content data. And then the user data is the ID. We profile farmers into our systems, we profile cooperatives, polygons of the fields, those are the identities. And they are also data. Just yesterday in UK here, a debate has started because the Prime Minister wants all of us to have digital ID, and the opposition, everybody said, no way, so that is a data. ID is a data, and we need to be careful how we use it. So we are also putting emphasis on national. It's not government, just as Robert was saying. The private sector is saying that they are being left behind. We want this to take a national approach, not a government approach. So that's the emphasis, both public and private. This is what we started with as the infrastructure, that we took to the countries to discuss. So we are saying the data infrastructure that we are talking about, it's not just a technical infrastructure, it's a holistic infrastructure that has technologies and systems for data exchange. But that technology, for you to use the technology, you need some guidelines. So those are the policies and principles. And then there should be incentive, the marketing and business incentives for people to be willing to exchange their data because they paid money to be able to build their data systems. And then there should be governance and administration. So we will go deep into this at some point. So I don't want to stop you. I'll leave that over there so that we go into the discussion. There's going to be one of the webinars focusing on that, I think the second week. But why should country consider this approach? That's the key question that we get asked. When we were having the dialogues, one of our countries, when we went, there was issue with trade policy decision. Countries made decision on what to import and what not to import. For example, agricultural products. When you know that farmers' production is low, you need to import to be able to meet the demand. So the case was that the government based that decision on only government data, and they imported some products. But at the end of the season, production went high because they didn't take into consideration private sector farms and others. So that created a lot of problem for the farmers. So what we are saying is NAgDI can help countries bring both public sector and private sector data together to make that kind of macro level policy decision. Another issue that some of you may be aware of is EUDR, the European Union Deforestation Regulation. What is happening now is EU is saying that, look, for cocoa, coffee, and some commodities, if you want to export them to EU, you need to prove that those commodities are not leading to deforestation in your country. And it's all about traceability. to trace the data from farmers' field to the EU market. So we are saying, look, our countries don't have this kind of infrastructure now, so they are scrambling, trying to see how do we make sure every company is going to the fields to take the polygons. If the infrastructure were to be there, it would have been easier for this to be, countries to be able to respond to some of these external regulations. We don't know what is going to come from US tomorrow to our countries. Another example is AI. Everybody talks about AI, artificial intelligence. For the smallholder agriculture, if our data systems are not together, we will not get a benefit. That is what some of us are saying. We are not saying AI is not good. AI is good, but it runs on large volumes of good quality data. But as of now, when you are looking for those kind of data in our countries, they are all sitting in silos. And you run on one of the silos, it's not enough to get that kind of prediction. The model will not function well. So we are saying NAgDI can create that opportunity to get that kind of large volumes of data. So that is the introduction for NAgDI. We will be going deeper into this in one of the webinars and even throughout the e-conversation that we have. So what do we have for the next 4 weeks? So this is a placeholder for the policy guide that is going to be released at some point. This is the webinar that we are having today. We title Everything from Silos to Systems. So we're talking about systems, silos, data systems, and all that. And from Monday next week, so week 1, Monday next week to the end of the week, there's going to be e-conversation. And I believe most of you have registered for the e-conversation, the D group. They will share the details registration for you again if you don't have it. So for the whole week, there will be questions. We'll put some questions. We'll be asking people to share their experiences of foundational DPI as explained by NAgDI and Robert, and some of the agricultural ones. Okay. And then we would like to understand whether people actually, know what they are talking about, when they are referring to DPI, just as explained by NAgDI, or they are just referring to anything as DPI. So you need to justify why you think this is DPI. At the end of the week, that's Friday, around the same time like this, we will have another webinar that is going to focus on the data system, decentralized and interoperable data exchange. We want to get, is it possible to do something like this? Is it possible to have a national infrastructure that allows existing data systems to talk to each other? What do we need? Do we have examples? Where do we learn from? Like the food systems approach. We want to look into that. Then the second week from October 6th to October 10, the e-conversation will continue. We'll put a different question where we'll be asking people to share their experiences, challenges, lessons, deployment of DPI in agriculture. At the end of that week, there will be another webinar where the focus is what is the value addition of the Commonwealth NAgDI. That's where we are actually going to deep dive into the NAgDI to respond to questions and get your thoughts on where we are with that. Then the third week, week 3, from the 13th of October to the 17th, that week is the World Food Day or the World Food Week. The FAO is going to organize all kinds of things, and we are also going to continue. We are producing a video to explain NAgDI to be released that week. And then there will be another webinar that will address that. And then the final week, we have the week of October 20th to 24th. The e-conversation will continue. Okay, we will go down to practical level, the use cases. How do we get this done to support AI, KYC for investors, climate, index-based insurance, all kinds of things. If you are providing those kind of services, what can this infrastructure help? And that is the week that we're actually going to launch the report, the policy guide. It's going to be a hybrid event, not through Teams. It will be hosted by the Commonwealth Secretariat. We will have in-person attendance in our office, only by invitation because of, the room that we have. We can't accommodate everybody. So invitation will be sent to some people and others to join us in person, but Zoom online version will be available for as many as will be to join. So then the final webinar for that will be talking about how do we collaborate? How do we bring all our practical cases to ensure that we roll out this approach going forward? So I will stop there and hand over back to Christian. Christian, I hope I've not talked too much. Thank you.
No, just in time, Ben, because we said we will try to leave around 10 minutes towards the end. But maybe just to recap a little bit, as Ben has mentioned, we are start kicking off this series of events. As you've seen, we've shared the link for you to join the forum where we're having the conversations as from next Monday. And also, I've just shared the link to register for the next webinar. But if you join the forum, the discussion forum, we will be sharing the links to the upcoming webinars there as well. And I can see that most people ended up asking questions on the chat rather than on the Q&A, except for Ashwini. So maybe we have to do justice to the one person who followed the instruction and asked the question: what is the process for multi-stakeholder dialogue for diverse agenda and silo thinking? And that's the kind of challenge, Ben, you have faced everywhere in all the countries. People are so used to thinking in their own little bubbles, but these national dialogues have been there to try to break it and get people to understand why they need to collaborate. Maybe you can say a few words about the process that you went through with these national dialogues.
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, it was a good experience. We contacted the government, the countries, the government stakeholders. We engaged with them ahead of time so that we tried not to leave people behind, So we communicated UN bodies, private sector, farmer organizations, government ahead of time. We asked them questions about what we are coming to do, gave them opportunity to come and share. And so during the two and a half days that we had, we did all kinds of activities. Christian was the facilitator to bring everybody on board, ensure that nobody is left behind. It was an experience, I think, and those who participated can testify. There were challenges, of course, trying to converse on some of these things, because of course there are diverse, issues on each of these. So yeah, it was a good experience. Christian, if you want to add something to that, right?
No, that's fine. I'm being the moderator here. I'll just thank NAgDI and Robert for answering some of the questions in the chat itself. But some of the, maybe a question to the two of them is, we hear so many technologically driven or technologically based solutions. And sometimes people get the impression that it's all about the technology. So, maybe between Robert and NAgDI, what is the relationship between DPI and, agricultural services or advisory services? Are they the same thing, or what is the relationship between these information exchange platforms? Maybe if you can try to distinguish them. Who would like to go first?
Christian, I can quickly jump in and then I'll
all right.
Let me chime in. But I think just to answer your question quickly, I think advice to countries is don't start with the tech, start with the problem, right? And what does that do? It means that you then start thinking about digital public infrastructure from a use case perspective. What are the problems you're trying to solve? And once you've figured out, the key problems that you're trying to solve as a country, then in that way you generate the use cases and can then start working towards appropriate solutions. The problem with starting with the tech is putting the cart before the horse. Because you start fixing problems that have not even arisen. And you start making huge investments to fix problems that do not exist. Where I come from here in Kenya, we say that it's like taking a bat to a mosquito. You're going to go and smash the wall looking for this tiny thing that is bugging you and bothering you, right? When you could have found another solution, right? So that's what I would summarize and say. NAgDI, over to you.
Great. So before I hand over to NAgDI, so basically we're saying that we see a lot of initiatives start off with big initiatives where the government is going to do registries of all the farmers in the country and so on. But as Robert is saying, is there an approach where we can start small and build on it rather than going big right from the start and realizing that, as Robert said, we're putting the cart in front of the bull? So what are your views, NAgDI?
I completely agree. I mean, I think you definitely have to start with a use case and also realize that DPI, of course, is the means, not an end, but it's also not the only solution out there. I know we've spoken a lot about DPI, but just to say that sometimes there might be other solutions that exist, and that is okay. Like, the idea is to solve the problem you have at hand in the best way possible, right? With the resources available. And DPI we see as one powerful tool to do so in a systemic, holistic way. But you have to, I mean, there are always trade-offs when it comes to investment. So you have to think about it in the sense of what is the return on investment on this? Is it addressing the issues or the key challenges in the sector or not? And then I think a second part to that is also, we often do talk about DPI and the technology and principles, but not about the ecosystem. And I think a few of the questions also were around the ecosystem, the political will, finding a champion. And, now it's become a more popular topic within governments, but still to have that shift from individual departments with their silos to a whole of government digitalization approach is a big shift for governments. And having an approach where you have one body which is looking at digitalization across various departments and sectors is a governance shift and a behavioral shift, which also needs to be looked into apart from the technology aspect. I would say the technology is the relatively easy part. The things around it are what we have found more challenging, especially in various countries.
So NAgDI, then, based on your review that you carried out in that report, are you seeing that countries are able to learn from each other now, or are we still early in the phase of learning from each other's experience?
So I think on DPI, there's been a fair amount of experience and countries are very keen. They've done a lot and they're very keen to learn from each other, both on process, technology, as well as innovate with in-country mechanisms, which has been really exciting. On DPI and agriculture also, of course, there's a lot of keenness to learn. I would say it's still relatively nascent. And so I think people are exploring together and there are many different ideas. But there's a lot to learn, of course, from how DPI has been approached overall. But I mean, huge appetite to learn. The number of knowledge sharing sessions or visits that happen to different countries, the DPI centers that are being opened now in different locations, I think is testament to that countries are keen to share information as well as learn from each other. So absolutely.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I see that we're almost going to be close to the hour now, so we'll have to end soon. So to a lot of the colleagues who've been asking questions, and thanks again, Robert and NAgDI, for answering in the chat. But I can see some people are complaining that their countries are not represented, and so on. But the solution is to get them on board this discussion, and that's why we wanted to start this on a Friday, so that on the weekend you can inform your colleagues that there's this conversation that is going to be happening over the next 4 weeks with different questions every week. on this whole topic of DPI. But the strategy of the Commonwealth has been that we're not here to present to you what the Commonwealth has come up with. It's more to take you through the process that we've also been going through in the last 2 years, trying to understand, make sense of what DPI is. And you'll see in the chat that we shared a list of resources that you can, reports that have come out in the last couple of years, where you can read up a bit more about DPI to see the different ways in which people are interpreting it. And what we see now is that, you know, even in 2025, the first half of the year was all about DPI. Now you see that in the second half of the year, there's the start of talking about DPI in a sector, for example, agriculture, starting with the report that NAgDI presented, and soon, you know, what the Commonwealth has been spending time discussing. How does DPI now come in and become a tool to support the implementation of these national agricultural data infrastructure? So yeah, so by all means, we invite you to join us in the conversations, the eConversations, hosted on the platform of the Digital Agri Hub. And they've been doing it for the last couple of years. So we'll follow the same model where we ask a question every week, and then we try to summarize the contents and the discussions, and they also host summaries of these eConversations that happen, so that we can always build on previous conversations and move forward. So with these, I would say, well, I would like to thank my 3 guest speakers today, NAgDI Parekh, Robert Karanja, and Ben Adom, for sharing some of their wisdom and insights with us today. But, you know, as I'm saying, this is not the end. This is the start of a journey for the next month. And by all means, please do invite any other colleagues to join us. The more we have, the more questions. Hopefully, we can also get more answers from the rest of the community. And we'll see how far we can take this into the process. As we said, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. So we want you all to join us so we can all together go much further ahead. So with these, I'll thank you all again for joining us today. And we look forward to the, okay, I think we need to share the set of slides where there was the link to join the groups. There's a QR code if Indar is there, or maybe I'll share mine. Okay, it's up. It's the last one. Yep. Okay. So those who have a phone maybe can just use that and quickly scan the QR code, or you can use the bit.ly shortcut, bit.ly/D4Ag to join the discussion, and we'll see you in the sessions. And any questions that you've put in the chat today, we will see how we can insert it into our discussions starting from next Monday. So with these, let me wish you all a nice weekend and plenty of reading to do on DPI, and let's see each other as from Monday. Thank you again. All right. Thanks for all your applause. See you then.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Robert and NAgDI, for your time.
Great. I can see lots of clapping, so it's good.
Well done, well done.
Thank you, Giacomo.
So you are the outside observer now. You can tell us how it went. But let's see. We've stopped recording, have we, or not yet? Let's stop the recording. I don't know whether you need to end the event, Indar.